Lord, O my Father, please show me the man of my life. You declared in your word that it is not good for man to be alone, and you formed the woman from his rib. So show him to me or take away this desire for marriage that torments me every night. Nadia's voice pierced the morning silence. On her knees in her room, she prayed with almost painful intensity, tears streaming down her cheeks. For months it had been the same prayer, repeated every morning. Nadia, 27 years old, an only child and a serious master's student in economics, woke up before dawn every day to beg God to give her a husband after his own heart. She had been raised by her mother after her father's death. Despite the pressure of her studies, she never skipped her morning prayers. You're going to be late again for your university classes, murmured her mother from the kitchen, hearing her intense voice. Mama, I can't stop. I refuse to end up with a man who will destroy me. I want a husband who loves God, not one who will make my life a living hell. The door opened suddenly. Her mother looked at her with concern. Nadia, are you crying again? The neighbors will start thinking you've lost your mind. Mama, I don't want to end up like those women who cry every Sunday in church. I want a husband chosen by God. A heavy silence settled in the room, broken only by the first sounds of the waking neighborhood and distant motorcycle engines. Her mother sighed deeply and held her in her arms. My daughter, God hears you. But don't let impatience push you into the arms of just anyone. A chill ran through Nadia. Night had fallen. The church's Bible study had ended later than expected. Holding her Bible close to her chest, Nadia walked alone, her heart calmed by the message she had just heard. Suddenly, a car pulled up beside her. The passenger window rolled down silently, revealing the face of a well-dressed man. His dark suit was perfectly fitted. His eyes glimmered under the streetlights. Good evening. May I offer you a ride? He asked in a deep, calm voice. Nadia stopped instantly. Her mother had always warned her to be careful of strangers, especially at night. She clutched her bag tighter. No, thank you. I prefer to walk, she replied firmly. The man showed no sign of annoyance. On the contrary, he gave a slight smile. You're brave. But this neighborhood isn't safe at this hour. You're coming from church, aren't you? He asked, as if he already knew the answer. Yes. But I told you I'd rather walk. Thanks anyway, she replied and resumed her pace, walking quickly. The car followed her until she reached the main road where she caught a bus. As she looked back one last time, she saw him standing beside his parked car, watching her leave with a faint, mysterious smile. The next day, Nadia couldn't get the man out of her head. His eyes, his calm voice, the strange feeling that he knew more about her than he should. Everything about him unsettled her. She tried to pray again, but for the first time in weeks, her words came out empty. Her thoughts kept going back to that car, that man, that moment. 3 days later she saw him again, this time in front of the university library. He was standing there, arms crossed, as if he had been waiting for her. You again, she said, surprised but strangely not afraid. I never force fate, he replied. But when something is meant to be, it always finds its way. Nadia should have walked away. She knew it. But something in her body froze, like her legs were no longer hers. Why are you here? I came to see you. His name was Ezekiel. A name from the Bible, but not from a man of God. No, his words were too smooth, too perfectly crafted. In the weeks that followed, Ezekiel appeared everywhere she went. On campus, at church, even near her home. And each time Nadia's resolve faded just a little more. He never asked for her number. Yet he always knew where to find her. He never touched her. Yet she felt his presence as if his hand were always on her shoulder. Her friends noticed a change. You're not the same, her best friend Leah said one night. I'm just tired, Nadia lied. But it wasn't fatigue. It was obsession. It was the subtle grip of a spirit that had already begun its work. One evening, Ezekiel invited her to a cafe. I want to talk, he said. Nadia hesitated. Her heart was pounding, as if something inside her was trying to scream no. But her mouth said, yes. That night, under the soft lights of the cafe, Ezekiel told her about his vision of love. It was beautiful, poetic, but cold. There are things beyond religion, he said. Things that bind souls deeper than any church wedding. Nadia shivered. Are you saying you don't believe in marriage? I believe in something stronger, he replied with a smile. Like what? A spiritual covenant. A pact. Those words should have terrified her. But they didn't. They thrilled her. 2 weeks later, Nadia stopped going to church. Not because she had stopped believing, at least that's what she told herself. But the sermons now felt hollow. Every time she tried to pray, she heard Ezekiel's voice in her head instead, whispering, suggesting, comforting. One night he brought her to a hidden place outside the city. A small abandoned chapel, half devoured by ivy and silence. What are we doing here? She asked, uneasy. Completing what's already begun, he answered. Inside the ruined chapel, candles were already lit. Symbols drawn on the walls. A circle on the ground. He took her hand. This is a sacred rite. No one will be hurt. It's a promise between two souls. She should have run. But she stepped into the circle. He murmured words in a language she didn't understand. Nadia felt heat rising from the ground, as if something ancient had awakened beneath her feet. Her heartbeat matched his. Her breath became his. I offer you my light, she whispered without knowing why. And I give you my shadow, he replied. At that moment everything changed. Nadia began to have dreams. Vivid, disturbing visions. Eyes in the dark. Children crying behind walls. A choir of whispers at midnight. And always, Ezekiel watching her. During the day she became more withdrawn. Her grades dropped. Her laughter vanished. Leah tried to confront her. You're scaring me, Nadia. What's happening to you? But Nadia just smiled. An empty, eerie smile. I'm fine. Better than ever. The evening of the winter solstice, Ezekiel asked her to meet again in the ruined chapel. This time, Nadia didn't hesitate. She walked through the frost with bare feet, the cold no longer affecting her. Inside, the air was dense, heavy, charged with something unspeakable. You've crossed the threshold, he said gently. Tonight you'll see. She sat in the center of the circle. Ezekiel stepped back and began chanting. The flames of the candles flickered violently. Shadows danced on the walls, moving on their own. Then everything went silent. A presence filled the chapel. Nadia couldn't see it, but she felt it. Something vast, ancient, hungry. And in the center of that void she saw herself. But twisted. Her face pale, eyes black, mouth smiling too wide. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't a vision. It was her on the other side. That's when she understood. The ritual hadn't been a protection. It was an invitation. She hadn't been chosen, she had offered herself. Nadia screamed. But no sound came out. The next day, the chapel was found burned down. No trace of Ezekiel. Only a single object remained in the ashes. Nadia's necklace, blackened but intact. She never returned to school. Some say she left town. Others whisper that she's still there, hidden in the shadows. Watching. Waiting. Why are you looking at him like that? Why are you smiling? He snapped, his voice ice cold. Raymond, he's just the waiter. He's doing his job. Nadia protested, panicked. In a split second, he raised his hand and slapped her violently. The sharp sound echoed through the restaurant. Silence fell. Conversations froze. Horrified eyes turned toward them. Nadia raised her hand to her cheek, her face blank. Tears welled up instantly. Raymond, how could you? She stammered, her voice choked. You humiliated me, he shouted, eyes wild as he stood up abruptly. Paralyzed, she grabbed her bag and rushed out of the restaurant under the stunned gaze of the guests. Outside, she ran to a taxi, heartbroken, sobs shaking her body. The next morning, Raymond came to her house early. Her mother opened the door, surprised, and called for Nadia. I'm sorry, Nadia. I don't know what came over me. The devil made me do it. Please forgive me, he sobbed, falling to his knees before her. Nadia remained silent, her face closed, while her mother stared at him with growing concern. After several days of silence and repeated pleas, she finally gave in. This is the last time, Raymond, she said, her voice trembling. You will never lay a hand on me again. He nodded, eyes lowered, swearing he would change. Nadia, convinced that God wanted her to give him a second chance, decided to continue the relationship. A week later, Nadia still hadn't found peace. Though she had forgiven Raymond, the image of his hand hitting her face haunted her every night. Every little noise made her jump. One evening, exhausted from guilt and fear, she locked herself in her room and fell to her knees. Her voice, trembling at first, rose gradually, filling the room with an almost surreal intensity. "Lord, I beg you, if this man is not the one for me, take him away from me," she prayed, tears streaming down her face. She remained on her knees for hours. As fatigue overcame her, her eyelids closed for a moment. She had what seemed like a waking vision. She saw Raymond standing but heavily chained, his arms and legs bound in thick black chains. He stared at her with a hideous smile. She sat up abruptly. "Lord, free my man from his chains. Free him, I beg you," she cried, her voice strangled by emotion. At that moment, Nadia believed God had revealed to her that Raymond was under the control of an evil force, and that she had to help him break free. From that day on, Nadia began to fast and pray intensely. She stopped seeing her friends, spent hours at church, and no longer answered calls from anyone who didn't speak to her about Raymond or God. She believed she had a divine mission, to save her man. One night, after an intense prayer session, she fell asleep and had a dream. She saw herself in a white dress, barefoot, walking through a forest. At the edge of a cliff, a black shadow appeared before her. It looked like a man, but had neither face nor voice. The figure pointed to the void and murmured, "Either you jump or he falls." She woke up in a panic, drenched in sweat. The next morning, she asked her pastor what it meant. He replied, "Sometimes saving someone means losing yourself. God might be telling you that by trying to save Raymond, you're destroying yourself." But Nadia shook her head. "No, pastor. God never abandons those who love," she insisted. Her obsession with saving Raymond only grew stronger. The more violent and manipulative he became, the more she convinced herself that it was the devil attacking him. The bruises, the tears, the insults, she saw them all as spiritual tests. Until the day she nearly died. That day, Raymond had come home drunk. He accused Nadia of spying on him, of wanting to control him, of being possessed by a demon. In a fit of rage, he threw a chair at her, then dragged her by the hair across the living room. She tried to escape, but he locked the door. He shouted, "If I can't have you, no one will." Nadia thought her time had come. She prayed aloud through her tears, asking God not to let her die like this. Suddenly Raymond froze. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time, dropped the keys and walked out silent. That night, Nadia fled to her sister's house. She stayed there for weeks trying to understand. Why had she stayed so long? Why had she confused love with sacrifice? It took months of therapy, prayer, and silence to begin healing. Even today, she sometimes hears a voice in her dreams whispering, "You jumped, but you're still alive." Nadia rebuilt herself little by little. She went back to school, found a job, and promised never to let anyone control her again. But deep down a scar remained. The kind that no makeup can hide. She avoided mirrors. She avoided men. One day, a friend introduced her to a man named Elijah. Kind, calm, patient. Nothing like Raymond. She hesitated for a long time, pushed him away, tested him. But Elijah never raised his voice, never made her feel small. The day she agreed to go on a trip with him, she looked up at the sky and whispered, "I'm ready." She'll never forget where she came from. But now she chooses where she's going. The truth hit her with all its cruelty. She had ignored every warning. She had mistaken love for a trap. She believed she could change him, while he was slowly destroying her. "My God, what have I done?" she sobbed, voice breaking, head in her hands. Yet, in a whisper, she promised herself she had to find a way out, even though she didn't yet know how. That night, after her desperate prayer, Nadia noticed Raymond dressing in a rush, visibly agitated. He avoided her gaze, grabbed his keys, and left without a word. An overwhelming intuition pushed Nadia to follow him. A few minutes later she stepped outside, hailed a motorcycle taxi, and followed him from a distance. She saw him leave the neighborhood and stop in front of his former apartment building. He entered quickly, casting a nervous glance around. Nadia waited a few moments, then got off the bike. She climbed the stairs slowly and pushed open the door that had been left ajar. Inside, a heavy silence filled the air. Candlelight flickered under a closed door. Nadia approached it, holding her breath. What she saw through the slightly open door froze her in place. Raymond was kneeling in front of an altar. He was chanting incantations, hands raised toward a dark cloth placed at the center of the altar. A cry escaped Nadia before she could hold it in. Raymond turned around sharply, eyes wide with rage and shock. "Nadia!" he screamed, rushing toward her. She turned and bolted down the hallway, panic nearly making her fall. Raymond's footsteps thundered behind her. She stumbled down the stairs and burst into the street, waving frantically to stop a passing taxi. "Drive, please! Drive fast!" she cried, her voice trembling with fear. The taxi sped off. Nadia turned to see Raymond's silhouette alone on the sidewalk, his eyes blazing with rage under the streetlights. She now knew the truth. The man she married wasn't just violent, he was a dangerous ritualist. Nadia spent the night at her cousin's house, unable to close her eyes. Her mind kept replaying what she had seen. That altar. Those strange words. Raymond, completely transformed. She no longer had doubts. She had to protect herself. The next morning, she returned to her apartment only to find the door broken, everything ransacked. On the wall, in red paint, one sentence was written: "You betrayed the pact." Her legs gave out beneath her. She collapsed to the floor, trembling. Raymond had discovered her presence at the ritual, and now she feared he would stop at nothing. The days that followed were a descent into fear. Her phone rang at odd hours, always in silence. She saw shadows near her building. Her neighbors claimed to hear strange sounds at night. But the worst was yet to come. One night, while checking her mail, Nadia found a small black envelope. Inside was a photo of her sleeping, taken without her knowledge. On the back, a single word was written: "Soon." Nadia broke down. She went to the police, but with no solid evidence and no direct threats, there was little they could do. She tried to explain about the ritual, the occult, but their skepticism was clear. "You need rest, ma'am," one officer said. "Maybe you're imagining things." But Nadia knew. She wasn't crazy. She had seen the truth. And now she was in danger. That night, Nadia made a decision. She would leave the city. She packed her bags in haste, bought a train ticket under a false name, and turned off her phone. Before leaving, she placed a letter in the mailbox of her best friend, Salma, a sort of confession just in case something happened to her. But barely a few hours after her departure, something terrifying happened. Salma, curious and worried after reading the letter, decided to go to Nadia's apartment to pick up her cat and make sure everything was all right. She never came back. The next day, her family reported her missing. Her phone had been turned off since the visit. The only clue: a surveillance video showing her entering the building, alone and never coming out again. Nadia, who had just arrived at a small hotel far from the city, received a message on the landline at reception. A female voice, faint and trembling, whispered, "You shouldn't have left. You're next." The call was traced back to her old neighborhood. Panic. Despair. Nadia realized there was no escape. These people, this cult, Raymond, they weren't just dangerous. They were everywhere. Nadia was found 2 days later in a hospital, unconscious, her wrists marked by what looked like ritual symbols burned into her skin. She had been discovered wandering in a forest several kilometers from her hotel, barefoot, in shock and unable to speak. When she finally regained her senses, she no longer remembered anything. Or at least, that's what she told the doctors. But deep down, Nadia knew. She knew they had found her. She knew she had seen something that should never have been seen. And she knew she would never be truly safe again. Salma was never found. Her case is still officially open, but no real investigation is ongoing. As for Raymond, he disappeared from all public records. Some say he fled the country. Others claim he never existed. But Nadia still receives anonymous letters every year on the anniversary of that night. Always the same sentence written in black ink: "You spoke. Now you belong to us."